I'm going to give you 4 growth theories.
Yeah.
So if you understand the theories, you can start to fill in the context of your analysis of a market, which is a little bit like a crystal ball. But there are other things you also want to look at. Where are all the rich people building houses? The path of growth tends to be upstream. Within about 20 minutes of where you work is where you spend most of your dollars. You can expect the high income housing to be upwind.
Hold up, not in front of the kids. Oh, sorry.
There's growth, there's more people. If there's more people, there's more
Demand for space.
Yeah, baby.
Hey, commercial real estate's never been so entertaining.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Hey, before we jump in, I just heard something, and you might have heard it before, but you're a math guy. Maybe you can help me solve this.
Okay.
So, there's a man that goes to a hotel, and he pays for a room. He pays $30 for the room. Okay. He goes up. The manager realizes that this man paid too much because the room only cost $25. So he tells the bellboy, he gives the bellboy $5, and he tells the bellboy to go give it to that man. So the bellboy on his way up, it's like, no one's going to know the difference. Pockets 3 of those dollars. Goes to the man. He opens the door. He gives him $2. Says, your room wasn't 30. So that guy ended up paying how much?
Well, he paid 30.
He paid 30, but he got the $2 back. So he paid how much essentially for the room?
$28.
$28.
Yeah.
But the bellboy has how many dollars in his pocket? 3, right?
Oh, wait. The dude paid.
So the dude he gave $30. He got 2 back. So he paid 28.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But the bellboy has $3 in his pocket. So 28 plus 3 is
31.
Where'd that extra dollar come from?
I don't know.
It's right? I couldn't figure it out. Like, it all makes sense, but it's like,
Yeah, well, what you have is you reset the guy's basis. He doesn't know it, but it got reset to 25 without him knowing, and he got 2 of the dollars back.
right.
The room cost 27. The bellboy stole $3.
I know, but like,
The cost of the room was $25.
yes.
The guy paid 30. So
Right.
on the way back, bellboy pockets $3. So 25 plus 2,
It's 27.
instead of 30 minus 2, you got to go 25 plus 2.
Yeah, but he gave $30, right?
Yeah.
And he only got 2 back.
There's only $30 in play.
Right.
So the guy should have paid 25,
Right.
but he paid 30.
Yeah, I know that.
So he got $2 back.
Uh-huh.
So 25 plus 2 is 27.
Right.
The fallacy of the question is, are you operating off $30 as a basis or $25 as a basis? And
Okay.
the answer is 25 plus the 2 is 27, and the $3.
Okay. Right.
Instead of going from the 30 and subtracting 2, and then it gives that difference. So this is much like if, let's do absorption.
Okay.
Let's see if I can remember the end of year occupied minus beginning of year occupied.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's say
I know that for a fact.
let's say there's $100,000 at the end of a year, and there's 80,000 at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 20,000 square feet of absorption.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if you're going to factor what the percent of absorption was that year,
Mm-hmm.
would you work off 100,000 or 80,000? What would your basis be?
The beginning of the year number.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same as this question with the hotel room. Your basis is 25.
Gotcha. So it's in the way in which it was said is the fallacy.
Yep.
Right? That's scary. How easy it is to seem like you're making sense and just fool. Like that.
The guy at the front desk reset the basis when he realized, it shouldn't be 30, it should be 25.
Yeah.
So from 25, take these $5,
Right.
pockets it, gives 2 back. The guy paid 28, but the reason it works is because the basis was reset to 25.
Right. Right. So so the number is from the basis.
So going back to the absorption,
Yeah.
if you have 20,000 square feet of absorbed space throughout a year, and your basis was 80,000, what was your percentage of absorption?
Oh, right.
What was it? 20 over 80 would be
40. 4. 20 over 8. 2 to about it'd be 4. 4%, 40%.
25%. 20,000 is 25% of 80.
Yeah.
Or if you divided 20,000 by 25%, it would essentially multiply it by 4, which is where you got.
Right.
And it would be 80,000.
Yeah.
So you had 25% absorption that year.
Yeah.
But if you took the end of the year number, 100,000, and you divided 20,000 divided by 100,000, you'd end up at 20%, which would be incorrect.
Right.
Because you're using the wrong basis. You're using the wrong denominator.
Right. I knew you'd be able to explain it to me.
I just needed to talk it out loud a little bit.
And the way it was told, it's like, oh yeah, where'd that extra dollar come? And I wrote it down all the ways that you were explaining, but I wasn't thinking the basis was set, go off the basis. I was just like, okay, it makes sense this way. Okay, 25, 2, that's 27. Then you got 3, that's 30. That makes sense. I was like, but when you say it in the way that it was said, there's an extra dollar. From where? Is this how people make money? For a second, I was like, I really thought there was some kind of thing I didn't know about how you can pull money out of nowhere, like an idiot. And that's the scariest part to me. That's the scariest part.
I think, when it's told that way, if you're working off 30 as your anchor point, then there's an extra dollar. Where'd it come from? If you're working off 25 as your anchor point, it all makes sense.
Yeah. Right. It's your basis, your anchor point.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks,
and if
Bo.
this makes it into an episode, I'm sure somebody can let us know if I'm even thinking of that correctly.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
Well, I may not be, but
yeah. This is interesting enough to put in an episode. What else are you teaching me today?
Let's talk about growth theories.
Yay!
Because we had our episode with Bruce Carlisle and Marina.
Land brokers.
Really cool. Yeah, land brokers.
So I learned so much in that. You can watch that right here.
Yeah, they were mentioning some things about like what happens when you have certain amounts of growth. And when you consider the theories of growth, and there's 4 main growth theories and other like indicators of growth, then it gives you clues on where growth is and could happen in the future, which is a little bit like a crystal ball, and it can help you make some very profitable decisions.
Ooh.
So, for example, Owensboro, Kentucky, we have a river to the north, the Ohio River, and then we have Indiana. Once you get into Indiana, it's all floodplain. Nobody really lives there.
Yeah, like right into it, right?
You go over, so like we've got a formal geographic barrier to growth. There's no growth north. It's all floodplain. It floods all the time. When we have these huge rains, sometimes you can go over the mile-long bridge over the Ohio River, and you keep driving miles into Indiana, and it's all underwater.
That's right.
Nobody lives there. So north is not an option. If you go south from Owensboro, you hit floodplain and floodway. And do you know the difference between the floodplain and the floodway? Have we ever talked about that?
No.
So floodplain is generally referencing the 100-year flood. So if we got a quote-unquote 100-year flood, the kind of flood that only happens once every 100 years, if you want to build something in the floodplain, you build up the footprint of the building out of the floodplain. Parking lot can still be in the floodplain. You can develop in the floodplain. If you were to buy a house and it was in the floodplain, your bank that lends on your house for your mortgage, they would require you to get flood insurance.
Right.
It's in the floodplain. And if you're out of the 100-year flood zone or floodplain, then you're not required by a mortgage to get flood insurance.
Sure.
And most people don't want to pay that. You can get stuff out of the floodplain by doing a survey. So the first 12-unit apartment complex that I purchased way back when was in the floodplain, and I didn't want to pay flood insurance. So I had a surveyor go out and shoot the elevation of the corners of the building, and it showed that the footprint of the building was up high enough so that it was outside of the floodplain, even though the rest of the property was in the floodplain. It was high enough. And so I submitted that to FEMA, and they took it out of the floodplain. And I didn't have to. So you can survey a property, and if it's high enough, you can get the actual building outline, the footprint out of the floodplain.
Gotcha. So I've always wondered this, because there are people randomly with the yellow reflector jackets, and they look like construction workers, with weird-looking cameras. They're like set in a spot.
They're like on a tripod.
Yeah.
And they're shooting elevations.
That's what they're doing.
So a surveyor, there's probably other reasons why they might be doing that. Yeah, a surveyor would go out there and shoot those elevations using that kind of equipment. I don't know how that works, but that's, yeah, you see those guys, that's...
Yeah, I'm always like, what is this person doing? Yeah. What is just, okay, cool.
So that's the floodplain. And I always have to look up whether it's P-L-A-I-N or P-L-A-N-E, like a plane.
Yeah.
You know, it's P-L-A-I-N. So floodplain, 100-year flood, you can develop, you just build up the footprint, and you're good. The floodway is even lower than that, and you are not allowed to develop within a floodway.
Okay.
You just can't do it. Like you could go into the floodway and dig it out and use that dirt to build up a floodplain somewhere else. But you can't develop in a floodway.
Like there's just nothing you can do to do that.
Yeah, it's just not developable.
Like it would need too much dirt.
Yeah. So if you go South Frederica, south part of Owensboro, after some rain, and you go past the mall, you go past Home Depot,
right?
You go past Sam's south, and you can see like all that be underwater.
Yeah.
A lot of that's in the floodway, and you can't do anything about it. So getting back to growth, Owensboro can't really grow to the north. We got floodplain issues, and it's another state. There's a formal geographic barrier there.
Yeah,
it's not good options for land. You go south, you get into the flood plain and the floodway, and sometimes it's just economically not feasible, unfeasible. It's not economically feasible to build up.
Defeasible.
I don't know that that's it. But I think people...
Zero feasibility. Yeah.
Not feasible.
Unfeasible.
Anyway. You can't go north, you can't go south.
Okay.
All right. Now to the west, you've got some floodplain, but you've got developable land. But what do we have to the west? Heavy agriculture. A lot of land is owned by farmers, and they don't really sell. Just because we have owners of agricultural land, there's not a lot of options to the west. And there's other reasons why the path of growth in Owensboro is not to the west, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
So the only real option that Owensboro has is to the east. And if you look at the growth of Owensboro, you see it grows to the east.
Oh, yeah.
So in our town, the path of growth is to the east.
Right.
A lot of reasons why it's going out that way.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is it's kind of the only option that we have.
Sure.
If you go to other cities, there might be completely different reasons why it's growing in a particular direction, right? And sometimes it's just momentum. Like in Dallas, our fund just invested in that deal that bought some apartments, 231 units in Garland, Texas. Garland is northeast Dallas, approaching Collin County. And on the other side of Garland, you have Frisco, Plano, McKinney, Texas, Collin County, Texas, which is high growth. And so if you look at the central business district in Dallas and you see where growth is, what we just bought is in that path of growth.
Yeah, okay.
And
Sure.
that's not the only growth sector in Dallas, but it's definitely one, and I liked that about this deal.
Yeah.
If you go to Charleston, South Carolina, one thing about Charleston that's kind of an economic driver is they've got, I think it's the deepest water port on the eastern seaboard.
Okay.
Which means the deeper the water, the larger the ship can come in. So Walmart dropped a really large, like Amazon large, distribution center outside of Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Like maybe 15, 20 miles outside of Charleston, South Carolina, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So you drop that many jobs in a new facility, what happens around that distribution center?
More people.
Yeah.
More demand for space.
You got demand for space, so you start seeing apartment communities popping up. And if enough people live there, you start seeing restaurants, retail. Makes sense to have some ancillary businesses with office buildings there. And you have like this kind of mini central business district popping up around a job creator.
Economic base multiplier.
Yep. All that stuff. Good.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can watch this right here.
Yep.
And you hit subscribe.
Yeah, always hit subscribe.
Yeah, please. Unless you've already hit it, then you would unsubscribe. Don't hit that button if you've already subscribed. Never thought about that. I wonder how many people are unsubscribing because I keep saying hit subscribe. I'm kidding.
Let's, what was it? Our last episode, you were talking about the top of intelligence or something like that?
Yeah, top of intelligence, yeah.
Yeah, let's just trust our audience to be able to follow.
I will. Also, one of my
You guys
favorite.
are smart.
Yeah.
So with that as kind of a backdrop, let's just talk about these 4 theories of growth.
Okay.
Now, this first one came from a guy in Chicago around 1920, and it's the concentric circle theory. All right. So you start with your central business district. And you go back to the 1920s and before, what drove growth in cities was transportation, and a lot of that was by rail. So think about one of my favorite movies ever, Tombstone.
Yeah. I'll be a huckleberry.
Okay, so you're familiar. Well, when they show up, that's right, baby. You got the stash and everything. Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. So when they get there, Wyatt Earp and his brothers and their wives, and there's this great scene where his horse is getting unloaded from what?
Oh, train.
A train.
Yeah.
His horse is getting unloaded.
Yeah.
And the horse is being stubborn, and the guy's trying to smack it across the head with the rope or whatever, and Wyatt Earp snatches like mid-swipe and grabs it, smacks the guy with it.
Yeah.
It just goes, hurts, don't it?
Yeah. I do. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
They got there by train.
Yeah.
And the train was downtown. It was in the center of the city. The train station was. And so you had these communities develop around the end point of the transportation network, which back then was generally by train.
Yeah.
So you start with this central business district, and just think about Tombstone in the movie. You had the banks, and that, you had the train station. You had that, what grew up as the central business district. You had the bars, the hotels, the businesses, the banks, all that stuff started out as the central business district. And you can go to just about any large city at this point and clearly define where the stinking CBD is.
Right.
It's downtown.
Right.
We all have downtown. Owensboro has a downtown. Murray, Kentucky has a downtown. These little bitty places have like the town square kind of thing. But if you think about Chicago and you're talking about downtown, that's like basically inside the loop.
Right.
Like everybody knows where the CBD is. Like not
cannabis.
Yeah, not cannabis, but the central business district. And there's this economic theory that talks about most economic activity takes place within about 20 minutes of where a person works.
Ah.
You're spending money on groceries. The average commute time in the United States is less than 30 minutes. And about the maximum amount of time anybody's going to commute to work is about an hour. Like there are some exceptions, but most of the time you don't commute more than an hour to work.
Sure.
And within about 20 minutes of where you work is where you spend most of your dollars. Now, as a complete aside, what happened with COVID?
Yeah.
We started working from home.
Right.
And there's still a much larger amount of time that people in the world probably, but certainly in the United States, spend closer to their home.
Right.
Versus before COVID.
Right.
It was more centralized around where they worked. Now they spend much more time at home.
Right.
And they generally are spending more of their money
online
within 20 or 30 minutes
of
where they live instead of where they work.
Right. Okay.
So like all these convenience strip centers and stuff
right.
that serve people where they live instead of where they work are doing great.
Right.
Because people are still spending more time at home.
Mm-hmm.
And these little neighborhood strip centers are much more in demand than they were before COVID.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why they're doing so well. They're all-time high occupancies, rents are up.
Wow.
It's just a good piece of investment real estate.
Yeah.
So you had it looks like you had a thought there.
Yeah. When you did the pitch deck, right? Uh-huh. That particular deal that you did like at the perfect time, right? Because that was post-COVID.
Yeah, we did it right in the middle of COVID.
Right in the middle of COVID. And
well, what we bought a center or our investment group did that.
Syndication.
Yeah, it was a syndication. Big word.
Yeah.
The average rents in the center were well below market.
Mm.
And so when you looked, it looked like retail was going to be strong for a while. And the more convenience related to the home, it looked like now that's been proven out, and that's what we're just talking about.
Sure.
But we bought that center because market rents were here.
Yeah.
And the rents in the center were here. And we knew if we bought it, we'd be able to get the rents to market over a period of time.
Right. Right.
Which is what we've been able to do.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. And at the same time, interest rates have gone up, which has led to cap rates going up.
Right.
And so even though we've been able to improve the net operating income faster than we anticipated, cap rates have gone up at the same time. And so the value of the property is about the same as when we bought it.
Right.
Even though it's cash flowing much better.
Right. But you got those interest rates before they went up. Like the interest rate that you got was.
Yes, but if we were to go sell now, people are not paying as much.
Yeah, right. Right.
So
you're hanging on to it. Well, I mean, it hasn't even been 5 years yet.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not even halfway to the deal cycle that we anticipated.
You're just talking about right now, if you were to sell, it just kind of evens out.
Because what I told my investors was, give me 3 years and I'll get rents up to market. Well, we were able to do it in about 18 to 20 months.
Yeah.
But at the same time, cap rates were going up. So we weren't able to increase the value of the property based on things completely outside of our control.
Right.
Macroeconomic forces, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the risk in commercial real estate comes in. Because if I told these guys, hey, 2 years, we'll be in and out. Like, we improved the cash flow of the thing, but if we sold it today, it'd be for just about the same amount. Probably a little bit more, but not much.
Right.
One, I couldn't have anticipated that.
Right.
And there's certainly nothing I can do about it.
Right. That's right.
And that's where a lot of the risk
Except you give yourself time, because one thing that you do know is the market happens in cycles.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And so, you give any deal enough time and some competency in operation, and you should be okay.
Yeah.
So back to concentric circle theory, you start with the central business district. And then what you saw is like dropping a pebble in a lake, and you start to have those rings that grow out. Concentric circle theory says you start with the central business district. And that next ring out is like a transition zone. So you'll generally have some manufacturing, some industrial outside of that area, and you'll have some low-income housing. And if you look at a lot of these cities that have grown up over 100 years kind of thing, you see outside the central business district, if it hasn't gentrified and been redeveloped, it's generally
there's a rundown
kind of ugly. St. Louis is like this. St. Louis downtown. Right after you get outside of downtown, there's all this like ugly manufacturing, low-income housing. It's like this transition zone.
Sure.
And then outside of that, you start to have lower and what's the word for medium income?
Median?
like middle
Class?
class.
Yeah.
Yeah, housing.
Middle class housing?
So they're still tied to the central business district because most of these people are either in the service sector and work downtown, like low income folks, or they're these middle income folks that have office jobs in the city or whatever. And so they live pretty close because their job is tied to the central business district or maybe even that transition zone. And then outside of that, you have middle and upper income housing. Or the suburbs. And so if you think about a pebble getting dropped in a lake, this is the concentric circle theory. Growth heads out like that.
Are we, with this theory here, we're talking specifically bigger cities? Because that's all I have pictured as you've been explaining this. But like, would this apply to Owensboro?
You might look at Owensboro 100 years ago and really be able to see this.
Okay.
But as things continue to grow and continue to redevelop, it may be more of a historical picture of the early stages of growth.
Okay.
From a city.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because this was coined in 1920. You said 1920s.
Yeah, the guy that came up with it. I forget his name.
So this is I'm just trying to connect it in my head. This theory would be a good thing for me to know as an investor or developer to see if it is a good idea to invest in something based on the whether it seems like it's going to grow.
Let's get a little bit more big picture here.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 4 growth theories. And when you understand the 4 growth theories, you'll recognize them.
Gotcha.
When you look at a market.
Okay.
And then you could say, okay, which one of these makes the most sense here based on the age and how much the city has grown over time and all that stuff.
Cool.
You'll start to recognize growth patterns. And then when you start to marry that with other more
tangible data,
more like defined things that will also happen, like, maybe there's a new road that's put in. Well, that's a big clue. Right. Or some other things. And we'll talk about that after the theory. So concentric circles starts central business district, kind of resonates out.
Yeah.
The sector growth theory also starts with the central business district in much the same way. Okay. The difference is I want you to picture, instead of like a pebble dropped in a lake, think more of a wagon wheel. Okay. We also had the wagons in Tombstone, right? And the hub of the wheel is the central business district.
Okay.
But as you have the spokes going out, you kind of have these pie wedges.
Yep.
Right. And so the sector growth theory says that sometimes growth extends out in sectors as opposed to like concentric rings that resonate out. And the way this one works is, these pie wedges generally have some form of unifying characteristic. Like that pie wedge is somewhat uniform in what's happening there. So you go straight up from there, and up is arbitrary. You might have the low income housing, would be there. Now, a lot of this ends up being uniform because, after the 1920s, where a lot of the transportation was by train. After the 1920s, when you started to have more automobiles happening and you had more roadways, and it was easier to get around in your own pie wedge because of cars and roadways, they started to take on like a life of their own.
Sure.
And kind of a homogenous sort of idea. So low-income housing. And then all the ancillary businesses or restaurants that generally support low-income housing, right? So maybe quick, QSRs or quick service restaurants, fast food kind of stuff, that kind of stuff. Then, so low income, next to low income, so the next spoke, the next pie wedge there is generally heavy industrial because it often employs low income type of blue collar worker. And then the next spoke over the next pie wedge, would also be low income. So on either side of heavy industrial, you often have low income.
You got low income on either side of heavy industrial.
Now, also, like, think about heavy industrial.
Mm-hmm.
Factories, manufacturing. What are some things that come along with that? Is it pretty?
No.
Is it smelly?
Yeah.
Is it
smoky?
Loud?
Yeah.
Okay, so who does not want to live around that?
Suburban moms?
Yeah, rich people.
Right.
People that have options are going to choose to live on the other side.
Right.
So the people that are stuck living around heavy industrial generally are the people with less options.
The Blues Brothers.
The low income type folks who often will work at the heavy industrial places.
Sure.
So you've got heavy industrial. On each side, you have low income housing. On the next pie wedge over might be light industry, which also employs a lot of lower income and might employ some of the middle income, which is the next one over, middle income. And then next to the middle income would be the rich people.
Yeah.
And then you go back to middle income, lower income, heavy industrial, lower income, middle income, rich people, middle income. You just keep going around. And it's all around the hub of the central business district.
Gotcha.
Now, there's one other interesting thing, I think, about the sector growth theory. And that is this. The direction the wind generally blows plays a role here.
Yeah.
Why?
Because of all the pollution that factories used to give off, still do, but like...
Yes.
Yeah.
So which way...
You want to be upwind.
Who wants to be up?
The high income people.
That's right.
Yeah.
The high income
people with
are
options.
generally upwind of the heavy industrial.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you can look at some cities, and if you really drill down and you understand where the heavy industry is and where the high income housing is and all that stuff, you'll start to see, oh, this looks like sector growth.
Yeah.
You just want to be upwind of the stink.
Right.
Owensboro is upwind of the paper factory that's to the east.
Thank goodness.
Because every so often, the wind changes and we smell that thing.
When I was,
And it's bad. I mean, it really stinks.
Dude, Savannah. When I was there that first, my first year, the smell when we got off, like to go into the dorms, the smell, it was just like poop.
Yeah, it was that sulfur smell from the paper factory.
It was
rotten eggs.
It was a paper. It was awful. It was a paper factory, and it always smelled that way.
So SCAD was downwind from the paper factory.
Yes, yes, like directly. I would imagine.
Did you get used to it?
Yeah, I got used to it. But every time you go back, it was just like,
because what did we grow up close to?
Owensboro Grain.
Well, that's downtown, but even closer was the Colonial Bread Factory.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the bread factory?
Yeah.
And we were a little bit south, but basically downwind from that.
Yeah.
And if you drove by the bread factory, like the smell was
wonderful.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And you'd get nose blindness or nose deaf or whatever the term is. Like you'd get used to the smell. And you wouldn't. So
that's right.
Anyway, the prevailing wind will tell you if it's a sector growth type city. The prevailing wind will tell you where the heavy industry probably is.
Wow.
And where the high income generally is.
So interesting. Yeah, the place in Chicago, if you remember, the Happy Mondays had moved in like just a couple of years ago. And all of a sudden we had coffee roasters right across the street. Right? So that was a nice smell. The roasting of coffee is a different smell than right? But, which...
It's still not a paper factory.
It's not. It's
that
not.
Rotten egg smell, it's terrible.
It was,
Third theory is the axial growth theory.
Axial?
Axial growth theory of land use. It builds on concentric growth pattern by adding transportation routes. Okay? So here, it basically just says where you add roads, you open up for development and growth. I would say that the concentric circle and the sector growth theories, when you look back in the history of a community and see how it's grown, that likely will explain it, one of those two. But if you look at how it's grown since, once it matured, and then you look at how it's grown since then, axial growth really starts to explain things. Where did they put the roads? Where did they add interstates? So, in Owensboro, and this happened a couple of years ago, you were still in Chicago, but our city government floated the idea of doing an outer loop, like another bypass, okay? Now, what that would have done, like we have a bypass here, but just one. Right. If you would have done an outer loop, what you would have done is opened up a lot more land for development. And our town did not want that.
Yeah, right. I remember you mentioning that.
Is generally characterized by people who have grown up here that like a little bit of growth, but don't want things to change.
Yeah,
Talking
no
about
growthers.
Yeah, and look, who's to say they're wrong? They want things the way they want them.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure.
But what would have happened if they would have done the outer loop and built that bypass essentially? It would have opened up a lot more land for development, and you would start to see neighborhoods pop up in places that are just big fields right now.
Right.
And my daughter's best friend's house would have been taken to put that road in. Like it would have. So like
easement.
No, it's not an easement. It is when the government takes the land.
Seizure?
No, what's the dang term? It's can't believe I didn't. It's right there, man. Everybody watching this right now is saying it out loud.
You know what? Put it in the comments. See if you can put it in the comments before he can say it.
It's going to come to me in a minute.
Yeah.
I'll come back to it.
If you know what he's saying, put it in the comments right now and see if you can get it before he says it.
This is really annoying. Anyway, so where there's roads. Hey, look. That's
Dad's calling.
Hey, let's take it. Let's see what it
Okay,
says.
cool.
Hey, you are on an episode of Commercially Speaking. What's going on?
This is Bo Barron, and the guy from UPS is going to call you in just a second about renewing his lease on the second, on that parking lot next to the warehouse.
Okay, great.
Just wanted to let you know he wants to go another 5 years.
Good to know.
Huzzah!
Hey, give me a word.
Hey, Dad.
Are you all doing an episode right now, huh?
We are.
And if it were anybody else, I would have ignored it, but not from Pop.
Not from Pop.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And give our mother some love from her boys.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
All right. Love you.
Love you guys. Proud of both of you.
Thanks, Dad.
See you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Love you guys. Proud of both of you. See you. Bye. The guy from UPS is going to call you. He's going to do another 5 years.
Sounds good to me.
Fantastic.
Okay, so axial growth, essentially where they put in the roads, you can fully expect that there will be growth because it's now connected via transportation.
You got access, yeah.
It's the same reason the central business districts way back when were built up around essentially where the train stations ended up being.
Right.
Because that was the major mode of transportation back then.
Right.
Now it's highways, roadways.
Yeah, right.
So, and then the last one of the four is the multiple nuclei theory. Okay. So we've talked about central business district. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But what you end up having in especially the larger cities, like imagine Chicago. All right. You have all those big skyscrapers downtown, all those jobs, all the residential, all the retail, all the money going down there.
Yeah.
But you go far enough out and you'll see other smaller like office nodes popping up.
Right.
Lots of office.
Right.
And they end up being like their own central business district.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
like how many can you think of in the Chicagoland?
Well, yeah.
Like you got like Rosemont out by O'Hare. You know,
Yeah,
they've
you got Rosemont.
They got lots of office and just it's like its own little city. Like you almost you don't really have unless you want to go eat at my favorite restaurant.
Right. Yeah.
Valare.
Valare.
Off Michigan Avenue. Like you don't have to go downtown. You
Right.
spend your whole life out there and
Right.
rarely go in to the central business district, which
Right.
is like an hour away, but it's
Sure.
still the same metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And you have all those different like little mini
Yeah.
CBDs popping up. Any of these large, primary cities look just like multiple nuclei. They didn't start that way. Denver's like that. Phoenix is like that. All your major cities, Dallas, Houston, they end up looking like that.
Yeah.
There's enough jobs that end up in a place that you have an office node that's built up. Those people work every day. They need restaurants to have lunch at. They need all kinds of other services to support that. They want to live within 20 minutes of where they work. And so you have residential, and it's like a whole new mini city pops up. It's part of the big city, but it's kind of its own thing. That's the multiple nuclei theory. And those essentially are your 4 theories of metropolitan growth.
Okay.
Concentric circle, sector, axial. Nashville looks like axial growth.
It does.
You got 65, I-65,
Oh, right. Yeah.
You got I-40, you got, all the rings around it. And you can see where all those interstates go. That's where it's grown.
Yeah.
Growth. So if you know those theories, getting back to your comment a minute ago.
Yeah. Why does this
and you're
matter?
looking at a market and you're studying a market for the first time, something that you don't really know or understand.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I'm looking at is, what does this city look like? Does it look like one of these theories? If it's a primary city, one of the big ones, it's almost certainly going to have multiple nuclei.
Right.
But 100 years ago, it might have looked more like concentric circle or maybe sector growth, and you can start to just fill in the context of your analysis of a market by understanding these theories. But there are other things you also want to look at. Okay. So for instance, if there's a new road put in, like here in Owensboro, they're taking Highway 54 and they're widening it. That's going to provide more access than before.
Yeah.
They're also taking sewers out 54. So what sewers allow you to do is to build neighborhoods on smaller lots.
Yes.
As Bruce and Marina were talking about in our land episode.
Right.
And you don't need these septic systems that require like a half-acre lot or an acre lot.
That's right.
So you can build dense neighborhoods where more people live if you've got sewer access.
That's right. That's the difference between $5,000 an acre and $500,000 an acre.
Potentially.
Yeah,
Or
potentially.
Not that big of a swing here.
Yeah.
But in some
Sure.
places, absolutely. Zoning changes are a big clue. All right. Where are all the rich people building houses? Big clue. Like, where's the actual money in that community? That's a big clue. All of these things, by the way, if you look at Owensboro, it's all to the east. Better roadways, sewers, zoning changes, the high dollar rooftops, all of that stuff points east.
Yeah.
And most cities that are on rivers grow upstream. The path of growth tends to be upstream. Now, why would that be?
Because it goes with the wind?
It doesn't necessarily go with the wind.
Because the barges? Would it have anything to do with transportation of goods? Because that's where the salmon swim? No, salmon swim upstream.
I don't know much about fish, but I think it's the trout that go upstream.
According to John Belushi, as the animal stand-up comedian on SNL, salmon swim upstream.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe he's the expert. I don't really know much about that kind of stuff, but pollution flows downstream.
Oh.
So growth generally goes
upstream.
So if you look at almost any city on a river,
Yeah.
growth almost always doesn't mean it can't go the other way.
Sure.
But the primary path of growth is generally upstream, and that's true for Owensboro. That's true for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
It's true for Evansville.
Wait, so the Ohio River flows west?
Yes.
Oh. I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, it flows
okay.
west. It flows to the Mississippi.
But if you're in a city like Chicago, you just flip that stream around. It's just reverse it.
They just changed the flow of the river.
That's
there.
crazy.
Yeah. So some other things that you want to for is where is the unused land, right? That's also a factor in Owensboro. Like that's also to the east. We've got unused, meaning undeveloped. It's used for agriculture mainly. But that's where there's opportunity. That's where you could do some things.
Yeah.
You can actually find people that would be willing to sell, and you got the roadway, the transportation networks.
Yeah. Now, just to clarify, unused land, that wouldn't something in the water, in the flood way. What is it? The flood, not plain, but floodway. That wouldn't be considered unused land, would it? Because you can't develop on it.
Yeah, unused means it hasn't been developed yet.
Right, but it could be.
It could be.
Yeah.
So in this case, when I say unused land, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
It's land that hasn't been developed. There's transportation, there's roadways, there's, it's a clue to the path of growth.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Or in other words, it's another reason why we can't grow north in Owensboro. I mean, all that land is technically unused.
Right.
For development.
But you don't have the option to use it.
But it's floodway.
Right.
It's like floodplain, like it's economically not feasible
right.
to develop. And it's in another state. But if you go to Louisville, Kentucky, just on the other side of the bridge, you have Jeffersonville, New Albany.
Right.
They're all part of the same metropolitan area, even though it goes over state lines, because that is an option.
Right.
That isn't floodplain.
Gotcha.
You can do something there, and there's interstates, and there's all these other factors. So
yeah, like Cincinnati, the movie that we shot this summer, the Trauma Entertainment one, that one there. That was right. Where I was staying was right on the other side of the river from Cincinnati.
Yeah,
where's
so
the little
Florence in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And
I didn't it just seemed like I was in Cincinnati. I didn't feel like I was.
Yeah, it's like South Cincy.
Right. And grown up where we grew up, it's like, across the river, it's totally different. There's Indiana,
Oh, yeah.
But there, it's like you cross the river, it's like, we're still in this cool city.
You're in the same metropolitan area.
Right. Yeah.
And then zoning is also a factor. Like, where is their zoning?
Yeah.
Where can you get the zoning changed to allow for the growth and the development?
Yeah.
So if you understand the theories and you're watching for the clues, zoning changes, roadways, where are they putting sewers, where's all the money, like where are the high dollar rooftops, when you start to factor all that in, you can identify where the path of growth is, and then you can make good decisions.
Yeah.
On where you might want to buy something, or maybe it leads you to want to sell something.
Right.
Or if you're a developer, you would rather find a nice plot, a nicely priced piece of dirt in the path of development.
Sure.
Because you can, not guarantee, but you have much better chances of seeing your development do well, prices appreciate, all that stuff, because it's in the path of growth. And if there's growth, there's more people. And if there's more people, there's more
demand for space.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
And that's the idea of, the theories of metropolitan growth and how they can be utilized. It's a piece of a larger market analysis. It's a data point or a handful of data points that, along with economic base analysis or shift share analysis or some of the other things that we've talked about can lead you to a place where you make a really, really good decision on whether to do something or not to do something.
Right.
Yep. Why don't you invite our listeners to go to the comments and vote for the city that they want us to do a market analysis of.
Yes.
And we'll just flat put one together and do an episode that is a market analysis on that city.
Did you all hear that? Bo's going to do a market analysis of your city. Put it down in the comments. Vote for your favorite comment. That's a great idea.
That'd do a little work, but...
Yeah.
But
I mean, is that work we could do in the moment while...
That'd probably cure insomnia.
That's not what our channel's about, though.
No.
I mean, this is commercial real estate. I'm kidding. I'm talking about the other commercial real estate channels.
Oh, you mean the other ones?
Yeah. No.
The ones that don't have a Timmy.
Commercial real estate's never been so entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Top of the intelligence, baby.
That's right. That's right. And your brain fart.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Cool.
you want a pop quiz?
Yay! Yeah.
Now, before we jump into this pop quiz, I would like to invite all of you to subscribe to our Commercially Speaking newsletter that just launched last week. The second edition of it actually came out today, which is a Thursday. They come out on Thursdays.
Yeah.
I don't know when this episode will be aired. But if you'd like to join that newsletter, it'll send out a podcast episode. It includes just other great content that a lot of it has to do with commercial real estate, and a lot of it is just business-related great information. So if you are in or run a business, this newsletter would be for you.
Yes.
We'd love to have you join. You can go to subscribe.wgbarron.com.
Yes. I linked it right down here or in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, question 1. I'm going to describe the growth theory, and you tell me which one it is.
Okay, great.
All right. And we'll start with an easy one.
Okay.
Which one has to do with growth around where the roadways go?
Axial growth of land use.
AIAL. Axial growth.
Axial.
Right? You open up, all these interstates and roads, and you will expect to see the growth go that direction.
Yeah, but we've seen that in like Nashville, like crazy, like past decade.
Yeah, for sure.
Like crazy.
And especially those gaps between.
Yeah.
You just see it filling in with all this growth.
Right.
That's axial growth. Good. Okay.
Yep.
Which one starts with a central business district and then has like the wagon wheel effect?
Oh. Where it's like in sections.
Yep.
Sector.
Yes.
Yes.
Sector growth theory.
Sector growth theory.
Question 2A.
Yeah.
A factor in sector growth
Wind direction?
is the prevailing wind.
Yeah.
So explain that to me.
So basically, if you're downwind, you're getting the smells from the factories and the industrial, right?
So
if you had the option, you wouldn't want to be downwind.
you would want to be
upwind. Yeah.
So wherever that heavy industry sector is, you can expect the high income housing to be upwind.
And the shame. How did you feel every time that I Pumbaa, not in front of the kids? Oh, sorry.
I was like, I know this. What is this?
And he never stood downwind. And the shame. What's in a name? I got downhearted. How did you feel every time that I Pumbaa, not in front of the kids? Oh, sorry.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good. I loved The Lion King.
Yeah. Oh, I did too.
Especially those two characters. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, question 3. What theory of growth was initially put forth in the 1920s in Chicago?
Concentric? Yeah. Circle.
Concentric growth theory.
Yeah. Is it a concentric circle?
No, it's concentric growth theory.
Oh, okay. I thought you said circle.
Well,
Concentric circle.
They are
It is a
concentric
circle.
circles, but
Oh, gotcha. Concentric growth theory.
yeah. So explain that one to me.
No, it kind of ripples out. Starts with the business district, and then you've got your next ripple, right? Which is low income.
Well, the next ripple is
Industrial.
It's like a transitional zone.
Right.
So you have industrial and some low income.
Low income, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
you've got middle income,
low and middle.
low and middle, and then you got
then-
middle high.
Middle high.
Yeah.
The burbs.
The burbs.
Yep.
Rocking the suburbs.
All right. Question 4. What's the last one?
Multiple nuclei.
Very good.
That's
and
right.
What does that look like?
You had your central bisnack. Yeah. Central beatniks right there. Central bisnack. And that city's doing so good that, the little other nuclei pop up around. So you got multiple nuclei. And so you got these little business districts, as you were, right?
They're like mini downtowns.
Mini downtowns. Yeah.
You got, employment centers, you got office, you got restaurants to support them, retail that support them, residential, their own little places.
Right.
Aurora, Rosemont, Cicero.
Right.
Now, question 5. Name me 3 other clues to identify the path of growth in a community.
Unused land.
Okay.
The direction that the river flows
Yes.
is another indicator, right?
So cities that are on rivers generally grow which direction?
Upstream.
Upstream. Okay.
Like salmon.
According to Joe Belushi.
Yeah.
Right.
John Belushi. Did you
Jim.
say Joe Belushi?
Joe, Jim, John, whatever.
It was John. And zoning.
Zoning changes are a big
Zoning
clue.
changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other things you might pay attention to are where the high dollar rooftops are,
Right.
where the permitting is happening, permits for new construction, new
Sewage.
roadways, where they're extending sewer lines, infrastructure, all that stuff. New school being built would be a big clue.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they serve, you have to build a school when you have more kids than you used to have.
That's right.
And that's going to generally be in the path of growth.
Cheesecake Factory would be a huge clue because of that population rule.
Going back to central place theory and threshold population.
Threshold population, yeah.
Okay.
Right? That'd be a clue for growth. Cheesecake Factory coming in. Oh.
Yeah, that would be more of a
Aftermath?
response to growth.
Yeah. Well, if if you're a little behind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, we had growth. Missed that one. Let's get some
that's
cheesecake.
often look, how many times, you've probably never done this.
Yeah.
But I've had this thought. I'm driving around town and if I knew 20 years ago what this would end up being, I could have bought all this land for next to nothing.
Right.
Hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just looking back, when we were kids, there was hardly anything out 54.
Right. That's
just
right.
about nothing.
Right.
There weren't the neighborhoods. There weren't the retail. And now it's our largest retail market. And that's happened over the last literally 22 years,
Like I remember Thoroughbred East was being built.
Yeah, and it was way out there.
All right. Cool.
Growth theories.
Love it. Love it. I do like dissecting or zooming in, right, on the smaller factors. These are some of my favorite to do.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Favorite episodes?
Yeah, absorption. That was really fun. Just kind of zoom in a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
All right.
And we got a few great ideas on here, too. All right, sweet.
All right. I love you, man.
Love you, too.
All right.
Bye, Alice. Thanks for tuning in to Commercially Speaking. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If there's anything specifically that you'd like Bo to teach me, and you as well, please put it in the comments right now. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please consider taking the time to leave a review. It really helps in this world. If you want to watch another episode, you can click right on the screen here. And check back next Monday for a brand new episode of Commercially Speaking. Bye, Alice.